Your stories are written, by your own admission, in the sestina form. Any of you who read Alice's whole book, and you should, will see an explanation about the sestina form, which is a poetic form in which, in each stanza, I got this right, a particular word is used, and in every line, and in the next stanza,
you choose 6 words before you start.
You choose 6 words,
and then you use each of those words as the final word of each line of the stanza. So each stanza uses the same 6 words again. I'm sure you've all read Sistines. Bishop had a terrific one, a famous one by Sir Philip Sidney. Yeah. This is a prose sestina.
This is a prose sestina, and if you watch for the words, well, you will find them.
It's not actually words. What I decided is if you're writing a sestina, you pick 6 words, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So the first line would be da 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 1, da 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 2, da 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 da. So I picked 6 things, sort of tropes. Somebody literary told me to call tropes, so I picked 6 tropes. And they appear in each story. There are 13 stories, and in each one, those 6 things appear. And the 6 things are a mouth, a glass of water, a map that may be wrong, an exchange, a sharp point, and I never can do a chord or a string or something. Now, when you write a sestina, you have to use the words in a certain order. So, as I'm sure many of you know, so if your 6 words are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, then the first stanza is going to be da 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 1, da 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 2, da 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 3. So, the second stanza, you start with 6. Da 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 6, da 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 1, da 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 5, da 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 2. So it's sort of bottom top, bottom top, bottom top. And the third stanza, you do bottom top from that. You should all write sestines. They're really fun to write. The poetry competition. Usually iambic pentameter. So I followed the sestine form when I did the story. So the first one, I just used 6 things however I felt like. But then when it came to the second one, like if I had done the glass of water first, in the first one, then it was whatever the second is in the second story, and so on. So by the time I came to this one, which is the last story, a double sestina is 13 stanzas, and the last one is shorter. And this has 13 stories, and the last one is shorter. So I had the prescribed order of the 6 things, and that's what I did. So I guess in this one, I think the sharp point, maybe the glass of water comes first, or the sharp point comes first when she talks about the hat thing, and then the glass of water when she drinks the water, and when she has coffee, and then the exchange is the sweaters, and the map. The map actually appears earlier, but the map that matters is right at the end. Sometimes I had to kind of cheat them. And when he thinks about the map of the lake, and the cord is the knitting, the mouth is when he gets the thing stuck in his throat. So yeah, so I had this, and when we talked about talking about our stories, reading stories, and then talking about how they came to be. And what I loved about doing this system was that it's playing. It's kind of like saying, well, the 2 bases have to be 90 feet apart. Well, why not 89 feet? Well, as we all agree, it's 90 feet from first base to second base, and second base to third base. Why aren't there 5 bases? Well, there aren't. And in the same way, I just had to do the sharp point next, if that was what came next. And you, too, were really, as you explain it, writing from something that came non-rational in a comparable way. Is that not true?
That is true. The story I read originated in a very unliterary way. I was in Paris with my husband and I lost both our passports. It's a horrible thing to do. And so we were about to leave and we threw ourselves on the mercy of Air France, who brought us to a small room with no window and a telephone. We wondered what that was about, but they connected us to the State Department, and the State Department, U.S. State Department, was able to ask us questions that only we could answer to let us prove that we were who we said we were, despite the fact that we had no passports. The last two questions they asked, we were very good at the questions. And the last two that they asked were our mother's maiden names and where was our father born, where were our fathers born. My husband did very well in his two questions, and I did well in the first. I said my mother's maiden name was Rosen, and then I said my father was born in Russia. I was quite frazzled by this time. So I said and I came very close to saying Tsar. I would probably be in a French asylum instead. But I didn't say it. We proved who we were and we got on the plane. But I thought on the plane, could there have been an unknown woman who was in fact the daughter of Tsar Nicholas II? Where would she be now? And so I did a great deal of reading about the royal family, the history of Russia, Rasputin, and so on. A month of research followed this. Where could she be? Could she exist? Where could she be? Then I had a month of invention where I invented the daughter of the Tsar, invented the mother of the daughter of the Tsar, invented their life after the daughter of the Tsar's birth. And so the story wouldn't be unadorned. I invented the Russian bear who could see the future. So there would be a kind of Russian fairy tale about this story. I enjoyed this very much, and I think any of you who have written will know the pleasure I had in this invention and writing. It's the stuff we writers do. The other thing I got out of it was a kind of sweet sadness. Every time I opened my typewriter to start working on this story, I was writing about events that happened to people who really lived in the world, and also to people whom I had created, and after a while, I could no longer tell the difference. So it's a very rich few months.
It is almost unbearably heartbreaking for me each time I read it or hear it that no one understands her. And of course you think all the way through the story that no one understands her. And then it is such it's such a moment of joy when someone does understand her. And I think because the story is about not just about particular persons, but about history, there's a great sweetness to the possibility of the idea, this fanciful, marvelous idea that may or may not be true, being handed on to somebody else, and this Dr. Matt who takes it on, It's so lovely. I think I don't want to know the answer to my question. But my question, if I wanted to know the answer, would be, did you know as all along as you wrote the story that someone would understand it? Or were you in the dark as well?
Well, do you want me to answer that or not?
I don't know. Should we let her answer it, or do we not want to know? We want her to know.
We want to know.
Yeah. As I went along, I was satisfied with the really rather hard work of doing the Russian and the regular speech, and I didn't think about somebody understanding it until I was about halfway through the nth draft. And then I realized someone must understand her, or the story would be rather meaningless, or at least dwindle too much. So I had named the doctor, so I think I may have had in the back of my mind that this Natalie would understand Russian, and I went back and planted a few little hints, like the blackbird, in which Natalie doesn't flinch because she has been understanding the story all along. So that's the answer. Not at first, but later.
Yeah, so I think maybe the reason it is such a sweet surprise for the reader is because it was a sweet surprise for you too.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
So I'll go back to the Sestina. Why? We now know how, but
yes, why?
Why choose it?
Well, I think that I had decided to write this book of stories, not that it would be autobiographical, it's not, but that it would be closer to my own family and my own experience than anything I had written before. And I think, like so many other people, I felt that it would be kind of flat and boring if it was about my own family and my own experience. I mean, even though it wasn't really my own family. There's no one in my family like any of these people. And I wanted a literary element. It was going to have two parts to it. It was going to be a book of stories that would be true, not to the facts of my life, but to the fact that I was a Jewish girl from Brooklyn with immigrant parents, grandparents. Not my parents were born here, immigrant grandparents. And the family in the book has that characteristic. It has the shape of my mother's family, the number of people in it, and so on. But when I was that girl, was going to Queens College and reading about Sestinas, and reading Sestinas. And I wanted that in there too. So it is a kind of reminder to me that I got out, or that that I was home in Brooklyn, and then I would go to school and read 16th century British literature. I think we write these things for ourselves as much as for anybody else.
Of course.
So, I was thinking of another thing. I was fascinated by the fact that the story began with a phrase that came into your head, and then the whole story came out of that phrase. My father was the Tsar, which when you said it, you couldn't probably have explained why you said it, or it was just, if you did, it was just kind of spirit of
playfulness, I think.
Playfulness, yeah.
I didn't say it.
But you did say it.
And I also
I think you actually did, but
maybe
we'll let it.
And maybe my father was the Tsar. I often think that, as many of us do, that there's a royalty in my background. My parents kept hidden from me.
Yeah, so it probably was. But I wondered if stories for you frequently begin with words, with a phrase.
Sometimes, but also sometimes they begin with a character.
With a character.
With a character, and sometimes with a setting. How about you?
Yeah. Mine almost always begin with a situation. Mm-hmm. with a
something to solve,
or a sort of a moral crux, often, or a thing that spoils things, and can people fix it, or something like that. Today, Edith came in by train at Penn Station, and her train was late, and I was looking around for her and thinking, if this was a story of mine, then we would find each other, but somehow, with enough misunderstanding that we would have some great difficulty that we had to deal with. If it was a story of Edith, we never find it. poetry would be in there somewhere.
It would be a lot of fun to write.
I got kind of nervous when I realized that. How am I going to explain this to the people of the Center for Fiction?
I don't know, certainly in a lapsed time of months, I had to do a lot of reading. I probably read more for this story than I ever read for anything. And had a very good time doing it.
But during that time, were you just working on the one story?
Yes, I think I was. I was obsessed.
But when you talk about often in your writing, you write a lot and then you pare it down. Did you do that with this story as well?
Not so much, no. No, I think that the extra stuff in the story was all the reading.
That's what see, I can't imagine what you might have taken out in order to get to where you are, unless some of it is the parsing of the language itself when you're doing your revision, so to speak.
Well, that, and I think I fooled around with the bear a bit.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Well, to hell with I wasn't very good when I got started either. I think you should just read all you can and keep writing and keep trying to write better. And and when you're very young, you may well learn to do it. And if you never do learn to do it, you'll still have a good time. You'll still learn. It'll still be worth doing. And maybe you'll end up not writing stories, but writing something else, writing reviews of other people's books, or writing essays, or it may be that you'll discover something, but it may be that it's wrong too. So don't ever listen to one teacher who tells you you're not very good. Just don't. Just simply don't. Find people who do think, and then learn. Always be open to learning.